Hello and welcome to English 2450, COM 2010, Intro to Film, Week 8, lecture video number 2 on graphic and rhythmic relations in editing. So, as shown here on the Prezi, editing offers filmmakers 4 areas of control over the film, and those are graphic, rhythmic, spatial, and temporal. In this video, I'm going to talk about the first 2, and then I'll break down the spatial and temporal areas of control in an additional video. So let's start with graphic relations. Now, what do I mean when I say graphic relations between shots A and B? Essentially, what this is referring to is purely pictorial or image-based. This means that the relationship between shot A and shot B draws our attention to something within the image. Now, this could be a similar shape, colors, lines, or movement, or it could be dissimilar, discontinuities or clashes between light and dark, right and left, vastly different sizes or shapes. So let's take a look at some examples. Now, one thing an editor can do is called a graphic match. Now, this is when you put 2 shots, shot A and shot B, side by side, and they show a graphic similarity. So, graphic relations concern the shapes, lines, colors, lighting, and movements in the screen, which means if shot A, when it transitions to shot B, has a graphic similarity or dissimilarity, that's very kind of striking and attention-grabbing. So I have 3 examples here. Now, this first example is a bone thrown in the air in shot A, and shot B is a spaceship flying in space that's roughly the same size, shape, and position on the screen. So this is called a graphic match, when an editor links 2 shots together by making sure that the image kind of matches in both of them. This other example in the center here is water swirling around a bathtub drain and an eye, and that sort of circular image, about roughly the same size and shape and kind of positioned kitty corner in the 2 different shots, draws our attention as a graphic match. Now, this image here is shot A and shot B from a film where the size and shape of a man's head is replaced in the next shot by this kind of cave. So you have a shape and then the lack of that shape in the next image. Now, these are known as graphic matches. This is where the editor links 2 shots together by way of a graphic similarity, the same shape, line, color, lighting, or movement across 2 different shapes, or 2 different shots. So this is how an editor can use graphic relations to connect shots together. In addition to graphic matches, it's also important for editors to consider the rhythm of editing. So shots can vary in duration. A shot can be very short or very long. It could be less than a second or even several minutes or hours long. Especially now with digital film, you can store quite a lot of film material on a chip or some form of hardware. And it used to be the case that your shot could only be as long as your reel of film. The physical reel of film has a finite length. Once you hit the end of the reel of film, you can't record anything else onto it, so you could only have a certain amount of time in any given shot. So for example, in the Alfred Hitchcock film Rope, it's meant to look as if the film is one long continuous shot. However, at the time that the film was made, the longest reel of film only ran about 10 minutes or so. So they actually had to cut every 10 minutes and then splice it back together, but they did it to make it look like invisible and you couldn't actually see where the cuts were. So it still looks like it's one long continuous shot with some kind of hidden cuts every 10 minutes to account for that lack of additional time. You hit the end of the 10-minute reel of film, you have to start a new reel of film, which means it's definitely going to be a new shot. With digital film, that's not necessarily the case. So directors have a lot more wiggle room when it comes to the duration of shots. They can be very short, they can be very long. Now, a longer shot length can slow down the tempo of the film, and a shorter shot length can speed up the tempo of the film. Patterns create the rhythm, right? You can have long shot, short shot, long shot, short shot, back and forth, right? And then you create a certain tempo or rhythm that way. If you use a lot of short shots in sequence with each other, that can create a very kind of sped up tempo. If you use a lot of longer shots, that can slow things down. Now, one thing to think about here is how different types of movies use shot length to tell us something. So in an action film or a horror film, we know that when the cuts become closer together and the shot lengths become shortened, that we're expecting something to happen, that the action is hitting a peak, something is going to happen to the characters. In a drama, a long shot length can really draw out a character's emotions or focus on their facial expression or their dialogue for a long period of time. So in different types of film and across different eras of Hollywood filmmaking and filmmaking really around the world, shot length tells us a lot more than we probably give it credit for. Now, an important thing to consider here is average shot length, often shortened to ASL. The ASL, average shot length in a film, is shorter now than it was in classical Hollywood, even though films are longer than they used to be. So when I say average shot length, what I mean is if you looked through an entire film and you counted how long each shot was, and then you divided that by the total number of shots in the film, you would get an average. So in an action film, your average shot length might be very short, maybe 20 seconds. In a drama, you might have a longer average shot length. The shots are held for longer in that type of movie, typically speaking, but not always. So the average shot length of a film, the amount of time that the camera focuses on a given thing before we cut or transition away to something else, it's shorter now than it was during the classical Hollywood era. However, films are actually longer. So a film in classical Hollywood was 90 minutes. And a film now is 2+ hours. It still might have a shorter average shot length. This is why older movies seem to move at a slower pace than newer movies do. It's not just that we are kind of different as a society and our expectations for film are different, it's that the films actually are different too. That shot length has changed, and we could maybe attribute this to differences in our attention span based on kind of the saturation of media, and short clips, things like Vines and YouTube videos, have really primed our brains for shorter shot lengths in film, whereas longer shot lengths used to definitely be the norm. So films are longer now, but they seem to move much faster, and that's because the average shot length is short. We jump from thing to thing very quickly, not just in action films anymore, but in all sorts of different types of film. So when I talk about rhythmic relations, what I'm really talking about here is how the length of the shot, whether it's a short shot or a long shot, can change the tempo and the rhythm of the film. And these are things to keep in mind as we watch The Dark Knight, especially because as an action film and a superhero film, the use of short shot lengths is really kind of important and integral to the way that the story is being told. In the next video, I'm going to be breaking down spatial and temporal aspects of editing, so stay tuned for that.